Training camp has brought us a slew of free agent signings. We're going to reflect on them today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day. And of course, a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, all these free agent signings, and yet the entire AFC East is still on Dalvin Cook watch. It's pretty incredible.
You know what? I didn't even think of that. I forgot about Dalvin Cook. Forgot about him.
My timeline refuses to allow me to forget about Dalvin Cook.
We got Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette's out there. Other running backs are getting signed. We're going to talk about that. But Dalvin Cook, what are we waiting for? Felt like there was the Jets, there was the Dolphins momentum. There was the Jets momentum.
Nobody's coming up on the dollars.
So he's got to come to grips with what the value is.
Correct. It's either you're not going to play this year or you're going to play for less than you want to play with. Or you're going to wait it out until somebody gets injured and somebody is forced to overpay. I don't like that for him.
Right,
because you still have this saturation of players. Like Ezekiel Elliott's still out there, like you just said. Leonard Fournette's still out there. Kareem Hunt is visiting today with who? Indianapolis?
Colts after he went to the Saints.
Oh, by the way, Jonathan Taylor might get moved too.
Yeah.
So we're going to sit here and I don't know if I'm a team that has money and I ask myself, okay, I want to make an investment in the running back position with a player who's a splash player, depending on what my draft capital looks like and my big contracts, I might be more inclined to go just try to trade for Jonathan Taylor than sign Dalvin Cook.
And also,
it sounds like Dalvin Cook wants a multi-year contract too.
Well, here's another layer to this. Right now, I'm pretty sure he's got the opportunity to sign with the Jets or the Dolphins. Those are not bad football teams. Those are teams that we predicted both of them go to the playoffs. If they won playoff games, it wouldn't surprise. They're legit contenders, in my opinion. What injury are you waiting around for? Is it Rachaad White in Tampa? You want to go be their lead back? What is this injury? Why would you reduce your options to that?
Hard to say. I think he's trying to maximize his value, right? So if he wants a multi-year contract, I feel like the big sticking point with Miami is probably Miami's salary cap situation is not going to afford them paying running back $7-8 million next year. It's just not. So that's probably a one-year deal, where the Jets are maybe a multi-year deal, but it's been reported that their offer is their offer. And from what I understand, that's kind of the situation Dalvin Cook's in, where he has standing offers from multiple teams, and it's just not where he wants the dollars to be.
Yeah. Well, a couple of running backs did sign with teams.
Good segue.
Kenyon Drake to the Colts, Melvin Gordon to the Ravens. I think that Gordon signing is more interesting than the Drake signing. It's what's fascinating about Melvin Gordon going to the Ravens is obviously he hasn't played his best football of late. There's been ball security issues there, but the Ravens have had a lot of injuries to their backfield over the last couple of years. And, J.K. Dobbins, for as little as he's proven and what we kind of perceive the way he perceives himself, is kind of an interesting dynamic. Right. Yeah. Really?
And Harbaugh saying that he expects him back, but it's up to JK. It's that doesn't sound good.
Nah, dude.
And I would not blame Baltimore one bit for not budging on a long-term contract and a pay raise right now for J.K. Dobbins.
He's already been hurt.
Dobbins is the kind of player who would really benefit from going out and playing really well this year to help. I think he's a player who can maximize his value with how he plays this year, but you got to play.
Yeah.
I don't think your resume at this point is going to have anybody leaping over themselves to give you a pay raise. So the Melvin Gordon added there, I agree. probably a adequate level starter at this stage of the game for Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably fair.
It's an upgrade to the supporting cast, though, because
It
right now
is.
their RB2 is Gus Edwards was a guy that we evaled as quality depth.
Yeah, kind of a specialized type guy. Kenyon Drake to the Colts. Now, I mean, their backfield situation's a mess with JT and the trade thing, and he's banged up. Zach Moss broke his arm. He's out for several weeks. So that kind of puts Deion Jackson in the driver's seat there. I like Deion
and Evan Hull.
Evan Hull, baby, let's go. Now Kenyon Drake, part of that mix, and of course Kareem Hunt's in for a visit. Kenyon Drake, ever since he left Miami, I mean, he had a couple of games there with Arizona, but you always knew he was kind of a high variance player when he touched the football, whether it was decision making, ball security. Like, he has those occasional explosive runs, some good physical moments, but I think every time I've watched Kenyon Drake, as the sample size grows, I just see inconsistency.
I would agree with you. I think that was a big reason why Miami moved when they did. And then Arizona makes him a bell cow. And from a volume perspective, you saw the home run hits happen more often. But just generally, I would agree with you as far as decision-making and vision in the backfield. There's passiveness in turning down runs to try to create bigger runs. And then you leave yardage out on the field as compared to if you just consistently ran hard and put your head down and your pads down. So, I think he can be a viable rotational back for Indianapolis if they go that route. I would much rather see them sign Kareem Hunt for the prosperity of the running back room. And they signed Kareem Hunt. Really makes you ask yourself what's going on with Jonathan Taylor, right? Like this would now be 2 backs signed in a week. And I understand he's rehabbing away from the team to work on the ankle, and I know what Jim Irsay said on Twitter, but if you've also come out and said, we're not going to pay him, we're not paying him, and the world will keep turning without him. And if you have an intellectually honest conversation about what your team's going to be this year, I don't know how you don't trade Jonathan Taylor.
I agree. What that looks like is fascinating. I saw Trent Richardson get traded for a first-round pick one time. I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah. I don't think he gets that.
Wow. I mean, McCaffrey does that deal set some level of parameters?
Okay.
Younger player though.
What was the McCaffrey deal? It was a 2 or 3.
Yeah, a couple of mid-round, a couple of day 2 picks.
Okay.
You floating, producing?
2023 second, third, and fourth round selections plus a 5th round selection in 2024.
Say that one more time out loud.
A 2, a 3, and a 4. And then a future 5.
Wow. Okay, wait. You think if somebody offers that for JT, is that going down?
For Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah.
I think multiple day 2 picks gets it done. And if you want to get into the you-know-what contest to milk some day 3 picks out, you can. But if you said a 2, a 3, and a 5, or 2, a 3, and a 4, I think that's the right stratosphere, unless you have a player of meaningful value with multiple years left on their contract that you could put in there as well.
N'Keal Harry is a Viking. I'm not sure that's very interesting. He's wearing number 28? People are losing their minds about that. Sky Moore's wearing 22, right?
Peterson's number to play.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem. Is it's 28. It's AP. Why is anybody wearing 28 in Minnesota? That's like
if you have Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison, Jalen Reagor, and say what you will about Jalen Reagor, N'Keal Harry's not higher on the depth chart than any of those guys, right?
No.
So is there a chance that N'Keal Harry doesn't even make the 53? Like Brandon Powell's a special teams guy.
Absolutely. Powell probably brings more value because he can return.
Right.
You're only going to roster probably 6 receivers.
And you'll probably roster between Ngakoue and what he brings in special teams as well. And running back, rookie Dwayne McBride, Alexander Madison, Ty Chandler. I mean, you might roster 4 running backs. CJ Ham at fullback. I don't even think he ends up making the roster. So
I don't either.
Let the preseason play out. Hopefully we never see 20 in a wide receiver again from Minnesota.
Run blocking specialist Marcedes Lewis is a Chicago Bear, veteran, leader.
I like that for Chicago.
I do too. Yeah, that's a good move.
Man, they're going all out with the tight ends, huh? With Kmet and paying Kmet and Robert Tonyan and now Marcedes Lewis.
Gives you some clues, man. We could see some 12s to 13 personnel out there in Chicago.
I mean, they
Creative
should.
run schemes.
When you consider the wide receiver room and DJ Moore and the upgrade that he brings, plus Pettis, and I guess Chase Claypool is as a big physical blocker. I love him as a gadget touch, but physical perimeter blocker to aid in your run game.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's somebody I would want. I don't know. What's the arbitrary number of targets you would ideally like to see Chase Claypool get in this offense?
40.
While acknowledging that he was traded for the 32nd overall pick.
You said, for me, I mean, if I trade a second round pick for a receiver on the rookie contract, I'd like to think this is a 70, 80 target guy minimum for me.
It was a 70, 80 reception guy, right? It's probably 100, 110 targets, but
right.
I don't think that's who Chase Claypool is going to be, but I think you'll see a lot of 12 with Chicago. And I think with the quarterback run game that they have and the numbers conflict that you can bring in that regard, you should. And then Roschon Johnson and Travis Homer and Donta Foreman as like big body backs, like they can really come at you downhill. I think they're going to be a really unique offense to play. The challenge is just not falling behind, although they did make a signing on the defensive side of the ball that we're going to talk about here in just a minute as well.
Real quick on Teddy Two Gloves, is he's a Lion.
Not yet, hadn't shown up yet.
Oh, okay.
So he'll be here next week, they said.
All right, that's weird.
Isn't it?
It's weird. You're running out of time here. You got a football team to make.
Signing with Detroit to be the backup quarterback, and he'll be here next week. We're 2 weeks into camp.
Yeah, you kind
of. What are you talking
this...
about? He'll be here next week. What's he in Punta Cana?
Yeah, I don't get it.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't get that at all. I don't get that. What I do get is heading on over to Underdog, folks. August is here. You know what that means. The official start of fantasy football drafting month. So make sure you get championship ready for your home league by trying out Best Ball on Underdog Fantasy. It is the easiest place to play fantasy football, Underdog that is, and it's the best place for Best Ball. All you do is one live snake draft. There's no waivers, no trades, and then Underdog sets your best lineup every week. So try it out with Underdog's Best Ball Mania Tournament, which is the largest fantasy football contest of all time. It's back again this year, and it's even bigger with $15 million of total prizes up for grabs, including an absurd $3 million going to the winner. And folks, don't wait, because last year the winner drafted their team in July. So there's no reason to wait. Head on over to underdogfantasy.com, or you can find them in the app stores. Use our promo code Locked On to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. So if you put $100 in, you get an extra $100 on top of that. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On.
You know what I love about Best Ball is it removes all of the manager margin of error.
Right.
It's like, oh man, I can't believe I had Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase. Let's see who'd be in it, like DJ Moore and Brandon Ayuk. Maybe at an auction draft and you pulled that off. And I had Ayuk as the receiver I left on the bench, and he scored 30 points.
That's the worst.
Hurt his hip, right? Like, Best Ball protects you from that, and that's why I love Best Ball.
You remember Kareem Hunt? Was it his NFL debut? He had about 10 billion fantasy points.
Yes.
He was on everyone's bench, including mine. That would not happen in Best Ball. Oops.
Yeah. I don't think any offensive linemen have spurned you, or defensive linemen have spurned you in Best Ball, though.
No, never. Not one time. My favorite move here, as we shift gears to the linemen, like my favorite move of all the moves that have been made since free agency started, was Justin Houston going to the Carolina Panthers. Man, like our biggest concern, we did that conversation in the last couple of weeks. My biggest concern with Carolina, outside of just everything coming together, was the pass rush opposite of Brian Burns. Hello, welcome Justin Houston, who obviously gives them an answer, but also, like, with a player like DJ Johnson that they traded up for and invested a reasonably high pick in to be a piece of this defense, I think a guy like Justin Houston will be great for DJ Johnson.
Yeah.
And so a lot of benefit here.
Is either rookie DJ Johnson, Yetur Gross-Matos, or Marquise Haynes, right? And now have Justin Houston be a part. Even if Gross-Matos takes a lot of first and second downs, right? Like, that's where Yetur Gross-Matos is good.
Yes.
In the early downs.
Yes.
And then you get that other pass rusher on 3rd and 7. It's looking pretty promising.
Yeah, I loved that move. Big time acquisition. He's like ageless too, man. These pass rushers
really good last year.
Yeah, man. These pass rushers can play later in their career because I think you just become so savvy and like we love explosiveness, like of course, and flexibility. But sometimes it's about just how do you reduce angles? How do you soften? How do you take good angles, right? There's such an element of experience that helps these guys, right? That becomes second nature, man. And I think Justin Houston will continue to play at a high level for Carolina this year.
Who else we got? We have Yannick Ngakoue to the Chicago Bears. You want to talk about desperately needing some reinforcements? It was
enforcements. They needed enforcements.
Travis Gibson, Dom Robinson, DeMarcus Walker, Rasheem Green. Those are the top 4 edge rushers for the Chicago Bears. And then, oh, by the way, 3 rookies amongst your 6 defensive tackles at the top of the depth chart.
You and I talked about this yesterday when we were chatting, and it's like, how many sacks does Yannick Ngakoue have versus the rest of the Bears defense? Probably more than all of them combined in their career.
Oh, man. Gibson, Robinson, Andrew Billings, Zach Pickens, Gervin Dexter, Justin Jones, Jalen Holmes, Travis Bell, DeMarcus Walker, Rasheem Green. DeMarcus Walker is the
Does he have more 20, 30 sacks? Maybe something like that.
Float around.
I'm saying I'm willing to extend this to every player on the defensive side of the football.
19 and a half for DeMarcus Walker.
Sure Ngakoue's had that over the last 2 years.
For Tennessee. Ngakoue's got what, like 68? Something like that?
Yeah, dude.
65.
Needed it.
Yannick Ngakoue, 65. Pass rush merchant with 19 and a half in the last 2 seasons, each with a different team.
Yeah. Needed it. He's not going to help him against the run, but that's okay.
Right.
Rush.
Right.
Long and late rush.
What else we got?
Dawuane Smoot to the Jaguars, or returning to the Jaguars. I know he's kind of coming off of an injury, but when he's healthy and available, I mean, he's such a nice player. Like one of those underrated guys. As I've studied the Jaguars throughout the years, I've appreciated his game. And another depth player there that, you know, you've got Josh Allen and you've got Trayvon Walker, but I think they needed a little bit more there. And Smoot's a nice depth player for them down the stretch once they get him back.
Jags, listen to the podcast. I remember us talking about the Jaguars pass rush and Dawuane Smoot. It was the X factor for the Jaguars. And then like the next day they re-signed Dawuane Smoot. So Jags, listen to the podcast, which is great because we like your team this year. We think you guys are going to be good, as evidenced by the ticker down here on YouTube. We have you guys projected for 11-6 in the division title this year. So props on Dawuane Smoot. No offensive lineman, huh?
Well, George Fant to the Texans. That's interesting because Titus Howard's going to be out for a bit. He gets the deal, right? And now he's going to be out for some time. George Fant, I think, is at this point in the game is as good of a depth tackle as you can sign.
Yeah. And he's better on the right side too.
Which is where he'll obviously play for Houston.
Right. I know he's played both sides for New York, but I think if you look at his full body of work, I think he's better right tackle.
And then the Titans threw a couple darts out here, Justin Murray and Chris Hubbard, which is interesting because they've got some issues here at tackle, right? Whether it's Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle and he's suspended, right?
They cut Jamarco Jones.
Okay. Are we playing Skoronski at guard or tackle? I feel like I should know that right now. But preseason's starting this week, so I'll be fully up to speed.
Another rookie in Jalen Duncan. Dylan Raduns, who's been kicked inside.
Right.
So like one of these dart throws is going to start at right tackle for the Titans.
Yeah. Those are important dart throws. Speaking of important, what we would love for you to do is for tomorrow's podcast.
Oh, good call.
Yeah.
Joe.
We are planning on doing takes on takes, whatever you want to call it. So leave us a comment in the YouTube video for today. So if you're watching on YouTube, leave your item, your take, your question, whatever you have. If you're not watching on YouTube, go to YouTube and leave us the take or question or comment that you have. We'll assemble the best ones, the most compelling ones, and that'll be our podcast for tomorrow.
And then we will be right back to finish with the back seven here on this episode of Locked On NFL Scouting. Okay, Joe, back seven.
Did we slight Bobby Hart to the Lions?
No, we didn't.
Come on, man. That's my jumbo tight end.
I'm sure it is. Well,
happy to see him in Detroit. I hope he sticks.
Do you?
Yeah, because that means he's not coming back.
If you have an honest conversation, Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnell, Big V, Penei Sewell, Matt Nelson, Graham Glasgow, Logan Stenberg.
Didn't they sign a Fetty recently as well? Or did they cut him already?
Fetty,
yeah.
But is Jermaine Fetty better than Bobby Hart?
Yes.
You think so? Like slam dunk, you think so?
Yeah.
And then a rookie in Swordstall who they just acquired this offseason. So
be tough. Uphill climb for old Bobby Hart coming in late.
I don't think we snubbed anybody. Go ahead.
No, we're back seven. Well, I mean, there's some names here, Kyle. Some big names here. Linebacker, corner, and safety. Let's get the linebackers out of the way. The Eagles, we talked, X Factors, right, was the linebacker core. They signed two, Myles Jack and Zach Cunningham.
They signed their best two linebackers this week.
These guys going to start?
They were both running with the ones like the day after they signed.
Wow. That's wild.
It's not a great endorsement for Ngakoue Dean.
No.
But obviously he's a second-year player.
Right.
I think that it's not time to pull the panic cord for Ngakoue Dean, but I think that veteran leadership was desperately needed when it's Sean Bradley, Nicholas Moreau, Davion Taylor, and Ngakoue Dean. Like, yeah, the Cunningham and Myles Jack, those are your best two linebackers based off NFL resume right now.
Yeah. And they've played better football earlier in their career, both guys, right? Jack was rough last year, and Cunningham has been kind of an up and down player that teams have been willing to move on from in recent years, but it's an infusion of experience and something to this Eagles linebacker core.
I don't want to give Howie Roseman any more credit than he deserves, but I do think it is a tip of the cap that you waited on a non-premium position and found veterans with starting experience who athletically should fit what you're trying to do and probably got them for super cheap this late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed you to retain your cornerback combo and bring back some players on the defensive line. And you know what I mean? It's like they prioritized early the groups that were really challenging and then got to this late stage in the game and still managed to find reasonable investments to make that still upgraded that room.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice lesson as far as the patience of the market. Like when we get to next March and somebody freaks out because their team didn't sign, like you can point to this kind of move and it's cost effective. The ceiling might not be as high. The floor might not be as high, but from a team building perspective, if it allows you to maintain kind of the pillars of what you are, it's an argument that's worth making to continue doing that approach.
Same, I guess you could apply some of that to the Steelers who signed Kwon Alexander.
Yes.
Another questionable position group for them. I know they signed Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, but I mean, Landon Roberts should not prevent you from adding Kwon Alexander at this point in the game as well.
No comment.
Well, no comment is everything we needed to hear.
No comment.
A nice veteran there for the second level of that Pittsburgh defense. Corner, we got some very experienced players. I think they're both first-round picks, right? Marcus Peters to the Raiders, Eli Apple to the Dolphins. I guess we should start with Eli Apple in the aftermath of Jalen Ramsey and the meniscus injury. They signed Eli Apple. What's the story here, Kyle?
Well, I like that they didn't do what they did last year, which was they waited through a couple corner injuries and then acquired Mackenzie Alexander, and then Mackenzie Alexander practiced like for 1 week, and then he tore his knee and was out. And corner depth killed him all year last year. So being proactive and bringing in Eli Apple, and I think it was a 1 year, it's like $1.6 million with like $500,000 guaranteed. It's like very, very team-friendly deal to bring in a player who I think is a reasonable fit in zone defense for Fangio's scheme. He's played in complex defenses in Cincinnati. Yeah. He's been a starter say what you will about the variance of his play. I think he's your third outside corner. I think it's Xavier Howard. I think Ngakoue I thought Ngakoue in spurts, depending on who he was covering and what kind of on or off or press coverage he was providing, looked more sticky in coverage than Xavier Howard did at training camp for the week that I was down there. Now, Howard's got infinitely better ball skills, but Ngakoue, in my opinion, should never leave the field until like Jalen Ramsey comes back. So that makes Cam Smith at best your third outside corner. I think it's Howard and Kohou, and then if you want to go nickel, Kohou can go inside and Eli Apple can play outside. But there's also the element of Cam Smith, who has flashed daily. He's getting his hand on the football every day in practice.
I mean, I watched him at South Carolina, gave him a hell of a grade. So he
is, and this is how you know
he's
it's
a
high
dog.
praise. This is how you know it's high praise. More than one person on the beat down there has said we have not seen a young player produce this kind of consistent ball production as a defensive back since Xavier Howard. So, I mean, that kind of sets the stratosphere of expectation for Cam Smith. So I'm fascinated to see how Eli Apple holds in that. And then Jalen Ramsey will be back at some point this season. So kind of a lot going on in corner, but I think it's a great value signing to make sure an area that kind of killed your defense last year does not get to that point again this year.
Of course, the Dolphins would get a Joe Marino draft crush, and then I have to live with that. So
no comment. There's a few of those on this roster.
More than a few. So here's one more comment on Eli Apple. We know he's a high variance player.
Yeah.
Don't be a high variance player, but then also have your social media persona, right? You gotta be careful. You gotta have some self-awareness there, my guy.
Right.
But nice. I think it's a reasonable sign. I was surprised they didn't go with maybe some of the other guys that had some familiarity with Fangio, but I mean, they worked out guys. They picked the one they wanted. Marcus Peters is a Raider. That felt necessary.
Necessary is the best possible word that you can invoke with this cornerback room. Right. And look, I like Nate Hobbs, and I'm excited for Jacorian Bennett as like a nickel player. We had nothing else going on.
And you got some rush, right? You got edge rushers in Crosby and Chandler Jones and
let Peters
and
hunt
Wilson.
the ball.
Yeah, man.
Hog.
Exactly. You can that's helpful for your defense. Then John,
I don't know. He doesn't move the win needle though for Las Vegas.
No, not at all. But
he'll be your best corner, but I don't know that he really moves the win needle for that football.
No, they got bigger questions, but that helps with one of their questions. John Johnson back to the Rams.
Great signing.
Yeah, right. Like talk about another team that just needed NFL starting caliber players.
Bodies.
Whoa, here's one for you. One that you know.
John Johnson, here's my take. John Johnson will be the second best starter on that Rams defense, and they signed him 2 weeks into camp.
So the contenders are Ernest Jones and Jordan Fuller
are the two players that we graded as adequate level starters or better that are not named Aaron Donald.
Didn't he sign a $10 million a year when he left the Rams to go to the Browns?
Yeah, the Browns signed the big money, and he never lived up to that. But he's coming back to the system.
He's a solid player.
Yes,
it's another example of how you like. At this point in the game, you can find some answers.
Right. Just don't expect it at quarterback.
Right.
Offensive line. I guess edge rusher that you can for aging guys.
Melvin Gordon's still out there. Melvin Ingram's still out there. Carlos Dunlap's still out there.
Who was the other guy that you got the name wrong on when you did your bold predictions and you're like, I know I always call this player.
It's Darnell Mooney. Dude, what is that?
Mooney.
That's a recent thing for me. And the whole world has let me know that I said the Saints would win the NFC North multiple times. But that's also on you. You sat there and listened to me say it.
I did.
You never pointed it out. Did you catch it or just?
I honestly did not know because I knew what you were saying.
All right. I checked my notes. The problem is I looked at my notes and my notes said NFC North. So I'm just going off. You know what I mean? Yeah.
See, you're like Ron Burgundy. You can't just whatever you put on the teleprompter, he's going to read.
Right. So less notes is better. So, yeah, like there are still players out there, Kyle. I mean, Robert Quinn's still out there on the edge. Jadeveon Clowney, Matt Ioannidis, hello. Shelby Harris, Michael Brockers.
With Baltimore, too.
Who did?
Clowney visited with Baltimore.
Ooh, That's interesting for your bold prediction that Ajabo leads the team in sacks. He still might. I'm not sure Clowney moves the needle for me.
Yeah.
Jason Pierre-Paul's out there.
Did you mention Melvin Ingram?
Yes. Not to be confused with Melvin Gordon.
Right. I would hate to see Melvin Gordon rushing the passer.
That would be tough for him.
And then obviously running back is still flooded right now. Are there any other groups that have names that like your eyes perk up for?
Jarvis Landry's out there. It's kind of rough.
So no.
Kyle Van Noy, does that mean something to you? Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph,
yeah,
Anthony Barr.
Those Eagles reinforcements on the defensive line still being out there are interesting.
Dalton Risner.
That's a weird one. We've kind of heard some stuff. But that the fact that he's like he finally got like in for a visit and still as a guy who started and is still young, the fact that he has not landed with a team, I think is kind of weird.
Kenny Golladay, William Jackson, his career downfall has just been something, huh?
Yeah. I thought he was pretty reasonable for a stretch there, and then got traded for like a conditional future 7th by Pittsburgh.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
Pro Bowl guard Roger Saffold can be had.
Okay, Joe. So yes, the pipeline's pretty thin. We got it. Hey, did you see? Have you seen J.C. Tretter lately? By the way, he's like retired, but like the former NFL PA.
Recently, no.
Dude, he's the latest NFL offensive line body transformation that is just Google J.C. Tretter.
Is it Russell Okung-esque? He is?
It's I don't want to say it's to that degree, but he went on, was it McAfee? Yes, if you Google J.C. Tretter McAfee, you'll find a link. And do you see him?
I do.
NFL center, J.C. Tretter. I saw him at first and I was like, who's this guy? Crazy transformation.
You know, Jordan Gross is also one that stands out to me.
Yes.
That was quick.
Yeah.
That's how you know if guys are really retired.
Meanwhile, then you have like Steve Weatherford, who looks like a pro wrestler now.
Really?
We'll sign off. We appreciate everybody checking out the show. Kyle Crabbs is Joe Marino, Locked On NFL Scouting. We're going to go down this rabbit hole for probably the next 20 minutes. Joe's going to Instagram search Steve Weatherford, and we will give you all an update again tomorrow. So appreciate you guys checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you all again tomorrow.